not with us. So, did you have a closed session discussion?
We don't have disclosure, we just have a.
Okay. So, we have to disclose. And approval of the agenda?
So we need to amend 3.2 to make it clear that the student number one is the 2014 to 2001. I mean, 2014 student number one. Because in the closed session agenda, we were talking about two different student number ones. One in item 2.2 is from 2014 and 2.4 was from 2012. So 3.2 refers to the 2014 student one.
So I move to approve the agenda with the change.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll move that we approve the stipulated suspended expulsion of student number 1-2014.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and, let me make some years, because I don't have the updates. We're not swearing anything student.
Right,
And that's going to be postponed.
the new student trustee didn't make it today. She's a volleyball game, so she'll be in November for her.
And the consent agenda.
I'll move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're up to reports.
That was
Yeah.
quick.
You got here a little late, so we hurried through that, right?
Sorry, I'm telling. Yeah, I'm going to be very brief because I know Suzanne, since we're here at Albion, she was going to talk a little bit about the program, so I'm ceding some of my time to Suzanne. Believe it or not, a week from tomorrow is the end of the first quarter.
Wow.
I can't believe it. So of course, this is a time of year that the seniors are being ramped up, working on their college applications. It's a very exciting time. And our counseling and guidance program has implemented a new career and college exploration program called Springboard. And so they've been gradually, Liz and Noah together, have been gradually getting all of the students, starting with the seniors and working down towards the freshmen, signed up and exposed to how to navigate that system and providing time during advisory tutorial meetings to begin the process of the seniors. They're well into it, but as we move to the younger students, getting them familiar with something that will serve their needs now and in the future, because once they have an account, it stays open to them indefinitely. So that's nice to see that getting off the ground. I was not able to be at the last board meeting, so I'm assuming that this was discussed at some point, but I did want to go back to make a few comments about our challenge day being a great way to start the new school year. I want to publicly thank Jason for allocating the funds, and Andrea Arenas for kind of dealing with the logistics and getting the dates and all that set up. With the folks from Challenge Day, the high school had 2 days dedicated. Half the students went through it one day, the other half went through it the second day, and it really was a very powerful experience. So now, weeks later, we're working to keep the message and the impact alive. Some of the things we've been doing, we've got a peer counseling program with our new counselor, Anna Levy, that'll be getting off the ground in just a couple of weeks. Because of lots of other things going on, we decided that a good time to get it started would be the first week of the new quarter. So we'll get, looking forward to seeing that the sign-ups were tremendous. The kids at the end of the challenge day had an opportunity to sign up for peer counseling and other ways to keep Be the Change, the motto, alive. And so it's exciting to see how that will develop. And with hopes that next year it will become actually part of our elective program. We had Club Brush, thanks to our new leadership teacher, Tyler Grinberg. It was quite a fun activity where various students decided clubs that they would like to start, recruited a staff person to be an advisor, and then students walked through kind of a forum in the gym to sign up for different things, again, as a way of keeping the Challenge Day concepts alive and inclusion, having, we all know we have lots of students that are involved in everything, and then we have those students that are involved in nothing extracurricular, and this is a way to try to expand the options for involvement, because when students are involved in extracurricular things, it really has a trickle effect in terms of their engagement in the academics and the whole school community and their high school experience. And last but not least, in keeping some of these concepts alive, Derek Hutchinson and then Andy Kramer from the K-8 and I spent several days at the Restorative Practices workshop, and we're very excited about implementing some of those things. The whole goal of restorative practices is to develop community and manage conflict and tensions by repairing harm and restoring relationships. And the fundamental hypothesis is that human beings are happier, more cooperative and productive, and more likely to make positive changes when people in positions of authority work with them rather than do things for them or to them. And so that's the premise, and there's a whole continuum of different ways that we can implement these practices. The obvious one is it's a great alternative to traditional discipline methods, which I think there's mounting evidence nationwide. The suspension doesn't necessarily lead to changed behavior, and part of the job of adolescents is to test the limits and to make mistakes, but our goal is that they learn from those mistakes and internalize rules. There are many times, just as a simple example, that I walk down the hallway and hear a student using inappropriate language, and I'll tap them on the shoulder and they'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Gail, I didn't see you." That's not exactly the point. It doesn't matter that I heard you. And so, have conversations, because the whole point is that they learn and do things when there's not an authority figure watching. So we're excited about that. One of the ways that we'll work on implementing some of the things we learned at this conference at the high school is everyone's very familiar with the community school, and how one of the foundations of that program is the morning meeting, which is basically having a circle. And there are a lot of ways that we can take that to the other parts of the high school, and in advisory tutorial, even in our 90-minute classes, occasionally taking 5 or 10 minutes to have check-ins with different topics of conversation that kind of set the stage for open communication, and again, increased engagement for all students in a safe environment. And then that sets patterns of interaction, but then when there is a conflict, there is something that needs to be worked through, the skills and the culture has been developed to make that happen. And so it's exciting, and it feels like there's kind of a synergy happening with different things that we're working on at the same time. Moving on, you probably all know that homecoming is fast approaching. It's the last week of October and culminating on Saturday, November 1st. And we'll have the traditional parade and football game and dance. And our football team, end of the first quarter means fall sports are wrapping up. The game on homecoming will determine who plays Anderson Valley for the league championships. We'll be playing Point Arena. Volleyball is having a great season, and they are in contention for league championships as well, so our athletic teams are doing really well. Basketball had their first meeting today, gearing up for winter sports. And then the last thing I wanted to report is that our summer program, once again, has been published. The Department of Fish and Wildlife publication, Outdoor California, or California Outdoor, has published an article that 2 of our sonar students wrote last spring, and we don't have copies yet, but by the November meeting, I should be able to bring the publication so you can take a look at that. But it's always exciting to see our kids write well enough, and our programs get recognized in a public way. Professional magazine. Any questions?
I noticed on the CBETs that we have, I think I'm right, 16 more freshmen than we do seniors. And after many years of seeing that class size drop and drop, and our graduating class get smaller and smaller, the idea of having such a larger, relatively freshman group was good to see, but is it changing the dynamics of the school to have that?
Well, it's changing class sizes, I'll tell you that. We have, the 2 earth science classes are maxed at 28, which is a large class for a lab science class, and a couple of the freshmen, went on to biology right away. There's an unusual portion of those freshmen in the community school. I shouldn't say unusual, it's kind of disproportionately larger. And so I think it's impacting the community school more in that I walked into morning meeting one day a couple of weeks ago, and sitting, in the circle, it was, there's like 60 students at the community school this year. So with the staffing there being lower than it traditionally had been, we're borrowing Emily from her independent study assignments to help participate in advising and morning meeting activities to help out there. But all in all, we're still small, and it's nice to see the rise, but I don't think there's much of a trickle effect. Thank you. Suzanne?
Well, this year at Albion School, we have 20 students, and 6 of those students are English language learners. So we really stress a language-rich program here. Some examples of that are poems that the children wrote today about bees. We've been studying bees, bee unit, and some of their artwork is up behind you there. Culminating our bee unit will be going on a field trip next Friday to the botanical gardens, where there are several pollinator gardens, and the bees are very active, even though it's heading into winter, but so there's a lot of flowers still blooming, which is amazing. Kind of scary. So, we also studied lizards because we're the Albion lizards, and the children also were working on how to draw lizards, and we had a logo contest, and we just selected a student. We're having t-shirts made, and the parents 2 weeks ago had a bake sale to fundraise for t-shirts for all the children in the school to have Albion School lizard. We're the Albion School lizards. That's our mascot. So they're very excited about that. And we have a really sweet group of children this year, and 2 wonderful instructional aides. We have 1 medical aide because this year a student last year was diagnosed with diabetes, so we had to hire a medical aide, and she's wonderful, and he's doing great, and so things are just moving right along. Oh, and we just published our first, we do this bi-monthly. Here's our little Albion Lizard News. So children write about what we've been up to. So when you're reading pleasure.
Thank you. Susan, if I could have my superintendent's report. First. So I just have a visual this time instead of rambling. Sometimes they sinks in more, especially for me if I can read it. So I guess I'll wait until it comes up here. But just some updates and announcements coming up in our district. First of all, the wireless project is moving along faster than we had hoped, which is great news. So we are hoping to have the wiring is almost complete at the high school, And then Albion and Compshe will need to be done, and we are hoping to have all of those up and running by the end of December. And we are hoping we are, sometimes if you say the worst case and then you do it early, then everything seems better. That's the worst case, hopefully, then in December, maybe even by Thanksgiving. So we are up and running at the K-8 school. And then I have talked in the past about a new, or a hope to get some more music in our schools. And the first event is planned for November 18th at the K-8 school. Just got word of that today. Corwin Zeekley, a former Mendocino student, will be bringing a quartet to play for the K-8 school. And Muse has helped out with financial assistance and also logistical help in finding the acts, and in particular Mel McKinney and Carl Shane from the Jazz Society. So it's good to have them on board. And also, just reporting on Muse, number 3 there. Muse recently on Monday at their meeting funded 7 teacher projects for a total of $8,500. And the next time they will vet proposals from teachers is going to be in March. So I'm really enjoying this new model of funding. Rather than funding just one program, I went to the meeting on Monday and I loved it. I loved hearing what the teachers had planned. So I'm excited about March already. Board meeting. We are, as you know, on video, and the videos are up on the website. So they are being filmed by Marshall's multimedia class, and you can find the videos the current month, as well as archive videos on the website of the district. If you look on the left-hand side, there's a school board tab, and you'll see board meeting videos. So you can also visit the Multimedia Arts website, and you'll see it there.
You might mention that the first one is
That,
limited.
oh, yeah. Yeah, the first one, you have to use a computer to watch it. You can't use a tablet or a phone because we used copyrighted music in the video. So.
I mean, I was very impressed that Google actually goes and vets every video that goes up, and found that there was this, 2 minutes of copyrighted audio in a 2.5 hour board meeting, and flagged it for that purpose.
If you remember, that was the preschool video that Diana showed. She had music in the background, and that's why we can't watch it on tablets. So thank you, Marshall, and Brendan. All right, so number 5 here, parenting workshops. These are now scheduled for Mondays beginning on November 17th. We'll skip Thanksgiving week and then do the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th of December. Skyhawk from Mendocino Coast Children's Fund, he's going to be facilitating. The district is paying for the child care and helping to provide that. So we are teaming with MCCF, and hopefully we get the word out, because these are going to be great and something that I think we all need. Number 6, I had my first meeting with the high school leadership team on October 2nd to discuss the future of the high schools, I should say. And we had a great discussion. We talked about all things philosophy, program, and the buildings. So we're looking forward to continuing that momentum, and hopefully we can bring them to the staff and to the community. The goal for this year is to have a good plan in place, or at least close to that. Any questions about my report?
Thank you. MCA.
Well, I think Gail and Jason kind of covered most. I think it's kind of the time in October, grades are kind of coming up, and so most teachers are kind of at that point where they're assessing students and kind of trying to figure out how best to serve them. And then you guys kind of touched on everything else. So.
Okay. Thank you. And we have someone from Siemens? Kathy, we'll start with you for board reports.
I dashed out of here in the middle of the last meeting to attend the California School Boards Association Masters in Governance program on the following Friday and Saturday. And there, if you don't know, they're 8-hour programs. There's 5 in the series, and they're aimed at helping board members become better representatives and more aware of the functions that happen in the school setting. So they were really good trainings. I have 3 more to go, and thank you MUSD for allowing me.
Nothing this month?
I thought I'd talk a little bit about our board retreat, which was 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago. Because I thought that we had a especially good time with Jason talking about a lot of strategic planning, but focusing on the high school strategic plan. And I think we were all excited by the potential we have to really reinvent how we deliver educational services at the high school and what that might look like. And to get the cart before the horse so that after we develop a plan for the high schools, we can then figure out what kind of building we need to house it. Because we certainly know that facility up there is going to need some serious work in upcoming years, and we need to be prepared to do that work. And part of that, I think, is getting the program priorities first, and then figure out what kind of building we need to have it, and how much of the building we have meets that need, and then to move forward. But twice a year we get together and have the opportunity to talk in depth about school issues, and the last several times with Jason, they've been especially good. The focus and the opportunity for all of us to contribute to this vision is something that is really why I think most of us become board members. It's much more forward-looking than what we're able to do in the time here. And so it was a good time, and I think that my confreres would support me. So that's it.
I agree. And many things were inspiring at the retreat, but clearly how committed our staff is. We have people on our staff that are enthusiastic, visionary, great leadership from the district office. So overall, what the retreat really did show is just this district's in a great space right now, and we have the energy. It's an impression. It's the requests coming from the teachers, from the administrators. It's kind of a dream come true for districts. So good things happening, and even though it's called a retreat, it's actually open. We don't want anyone to be confused that we're going off and having a retreat that's exclusive to the board. The retreats are an open session. And so if you want to come and see all the wonderful things in a more casual but ground out appropriate setting, that's a great way to do it.
I can't find a clock.
Oh, there it is. It's 5:30.
Okay, so we'll go ahead to section 8.
All right.
Give an update on standardized tests.
Yep. All right,
So maybe
so
one way.
you have it on the screen as well.
Okay.
So you'll notice that the standardized testing report is much smaller this year, because the only thing that we got results on this year, or from last year's testing, is science in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. We did the STAR test, which we've done for many years, so I just added to my report that I've been giving for the last couple of years, and it goes all the way back to 2009. So here are the 5th grade results. And if you look at the very bottom, it's 2014. That's the green is our district, or the green is our 5th graders. The red is the state. You can see how we compare to the state. But what I like to, focus on the most is just, So really, what we want is students to be advanced or proficient. So you add up the 47 and 20. So we have 67% of our students that scored advanced or proficient on the test. And I believe this was, oh yeah, you have the numbers. So just to give you a perspective, this is 30 students. So if you can tell that a couple students, either way, really would throw our numbers because we are so small. Let's keep that in mind. So, and then moving on to the 8th grade. And this was 52 students. Let's see the results for 8th grade. Just historically, just pointing out, we started in the 60s and went all the way up to 86%. Back down to 62%. I don't know how many students were testing over the years. And then moving on to 10th grade. This represents 49 students taking the test. You'll recall we took the Smarter Balanced assessment this year, the computerized assessment, which was a pilot year for all schools for math and English language arts. And then this year it's going to count. So we're going to be taking that test again in the spring, the computerized test, but we will be doing the STAR testing again for science paper as we go with that.
So the 2013 and previous results were the California STAR testing, and for the 2014 is the Smarter Balance test.
You mean up here?
Yeah,
No, this is the STAR test.
this STAR test.
Yeah, so science is the only subject.
All right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are many school districts doing that, continuing with the STAR test at least for a period of time?
They have to switch
Yeah.
over
So this year, and then how many years?
from returning. Or we don't know. It's
Until
just-
everyone's 100% proficient.
Well, yeah, until the change, another change comes down. So this is, the Smarter Balanced assessments are testing the new Common Core standards. So, usually, I think historically, I don't quote me on this, but, usually every 7 to 10 years, it seems like something else happens. We get new standards and new tests, so, it's hard to say when it's gonna go until.
I guess this is probably a good time, I could have done it earlier in the board reports, but I signed up to be involved in the benchmarking for the 8th grade math testing.
Did you do it yet?
I did it, and but I would say I failed. I mean, I signed up for it because I wanted to be sure that I thought the 8th grade standards were going to be rigorous enough. And,
They are.
so I first took the 8th grade sample test, that we were going to be evaluating. And I was pleased that there was certainly lots of algebra in there. You couldn't pass this test if you didn't know algebra. You couldn't pass this test if you didn't know geometry. I mean, it was, I thought, a lot harder than the test we require for high school graduation, the high school exit exam. So, but then the next part of it was, that was just the easy part. The next part was, like 29 questions. And then you had to identify at what level you thought the average person in the 5 brackets, it's pretty much like this, far below, basic, proficient, and advanced, would follow. So in other words, you look at a question and you had to say, would the threshold for this particular question be half the people in the second bracket would get it right? That was the threshold. You do this for 29 questions, and it was beyond my ken. I mean, I'm not a math teacher. I don't work with these kids on a daily basis, so I didn't complete my assignment. But it was certainly very instructive in terms of how difficult that whole process is, and the fact that, at least based on the material I was given, that my anxiety about that 8th grade math would be not hard enough to really prepare students for rigorous math in high school was not founded. And on the other hand, it meant that if people were thinking that the switch to Common Core is going to be at all easy, I think that's also unfounded. I think this is a lot harder than we've been used to.
I agree. I think that you'll find that most of our students and teachers would agree that the pilot assessment last year was difficult.
Isn't it also true that these tests, they're computerized, right? And if they change what they ask you based on your answer to the previous question?
Yeah.
So your experience of the test might be different than
Oh, I
test
see.
taker B's
Right,
experience of the
forgot
test.
too many of them right.
I mean, somebody could go down a third grade
Yeah.
path on the
Yeah.
8th grade test or
Uh-huh.
12th grade. 8th grade test.
Okay.
And the
That was
test
not the
that was-
case in the pilot.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know
test
what you did, but what the kids did was not
Yeah.
the case in the pilot.
Yeah.
But
This
that is
spring it
how it's
will
gonna
be.
work,
This
right?
spring it will be.
So that's to reinforce what you know rather than what you don't.
Well, it's to define that critical point of
Right.
just on the edge of what you
Right.
don't know.
They're still calibrating it though. 'Cause
Yeah, I
They
mean,
found out
that'd
it
be hard
was
to
way
do.
too high in a lot of areas and they're
Well,
pulling it
I think-
back.
I don't know how many thousands of people were in my category, because you could be a teacher or a community member or whatever, volunteer for it. And they were gonna take that data, I think it's this week, and they brought in 3,000 people over from the state to do this face-to-face for each. That's 3,000 people, not just race grade, that's 3,000 people for the entire K-8 curriculum. But they're doing the same type of process, and at that point, they were going to have, I guess, their first final draft of a testing, and then they would subject that to some
Guinea
further
pigs.
guinea pigs, and then some version of that would be,
What we
tested
see,
in
yeah.
April or May.
Okay, so this is the the reduced workload program for 2015-16, and by November 15th each year, the board needs to just declare whether or not this option will be open for proposals. So, if you approve this option, it's just saying that it's something that teachers could propose by February 1st, and then actually in February is when you make the decision as to whether or not to accept their proposal.
Do we have guidelines in terms of things? Because I know at various times, we've had the issue of, could someone work a half-time job, meaning 2.5 days a week theoretically? Or does that mean that they have to, they stretch it over the full year to work the same schedule both semesters?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm not aware of any guidelines that are written. I think it's on an individual basis. But I think for an elementary grade compared to high school, I think that looks differently. So I think that could be a part of the proposal that we look at. Or if we get a proposal from a teacher, we could ask them to reconsider that part of it, the scheduling aspect of it.
But in terms of opening it up, doesn't mean you have to accept any of the proposals.
Right.
And if you accept one, it doesn't mean you have to accept all.
Right.
Right.
I move to approve 8.2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, point 3.
So the bus routes change each year, and so we need to, the bus driver was driving 7.25 hours last year, and the route changed, as they always do. And the bus driver was never laid off for that 15 minutes, so this resolution will make that happen. We are working to look at some language where the bus drivers would all go back to their contract in 6 hours at the end of the year, and then whatever routes change, we would increase the bus drivers for that. But that's not at this time. This is just for this particular layoff.
Because we have another bus driver whose shift is increasing
Right.
a similar amount.
Exactly. Yeah, they change all the time.
I move we adopt resolution 2014-21.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Point 4.
Okay, so these two policies are the first reading. The first one, professional development, part of that has been changed to reflect the negotiated agreement. Really, it's just about timelines, I believe, right, Susan? The Williams uniform complaint procedures have been updated to reflect the latest. Do I have anything written in my packet? I don't think I do.
No, I don't see any notes on here.
Okay.
In particular, it includes the LCAP stuff as the uniform complaint procedure being part of.
Harder, you said?
LCAP is number 7 on my
Oh, I see.
complaint now.
I move that we approve both of these as a first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, still a little short of 6.
We still have 8.5.
Right, so we're not going to 6.
We still have to discuss the information item only item two.
Yes, I
Oh,
know.
oh, I see.
I'm just checking, I don't see a clock anywhere.
Oh, I see.
Checking it out.
I don't know, we got 20 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes, all right. There's no clock anywhere. Okay, so, all right.
So let's see, the suspension and expulsion is information only. And those, there are some, there's an update in there from the new bill that was signed that requires administrators to, we can't suspend or expel based on defiance. I don't have it in front of me, so defiance, we have to try other means of correction, and so that it just incorporates the latest in that law. Yeah, well, I mean, it's.
So it essentially just takes defiance out of the suspension, expulsion.
I don't think it takes it out. I think that
For first-time
you
offenses.
need to try other means of correction.
Wasn't some of that directed at K-3?
I think it was, in particular K-3. It's really just wanting to get at the underlying problems instead of suspending or expelling. There's, trying to find out what the reason is. Why is there being defiance? Why is that happening?
And now Michael's gonna tap dance for 10 minutes.
No, I think we get past it. I don't, if anybody did want to comment at 6 o'clock, we'll move it forward. Otherwise, we're going to go back into closed session because we didn't finish
This
anything.
have to be 9.
Yeah, but I mean, we can,
We can reconvene out here again if there's.
if someone here wants to speak now under public expression, this is the time to do it. And we'll come back at 6 to see if anybody's here.
I'd love to.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Paul McCarthy, I'm from Elk.
We can just, we have to read
You
the,
got the clock?
we have to read the,
Yeah, okay.
sorry, there's
Yeah,
a,
I understand.
Okay.
That means you might get to read it
Not,
twice.
pardon?
That means you might get to read it.
It's already.
We'll run the videotape back.
All right. Items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this body may be addressed at this time or be submitted to the superintendent in writing for board consideration as an agenda item. A 3-minute limit is set for each speaker on all items. The total time for public input on each item is limited to 20 minutes. The Brown Act does not permit the board to take action on any item that is not on the agenda. In order to protect the rights of all involved, complaints about employees should be addressed through the district complaint process. Speaking about a personnel issue at a board meeting may prevent the board from being able to take action on it, act on it. Please see administrator to initiate the complaint process. The board may briefly respond to public comments by asking questions to clarify the speaker's comments and refer the speaker to the superintendent for further clarification. We thank each of you for your comments and participation at this meeting. Okay.
All right.
Time? Again, let's
How
try
you doing?
this.
Paul McCarthy from Elk. I had a son go through 13 years of Mendocino education. I want to address the cancellation of homecoming with 1 week notice. This is unprecedented, and it's for a religious reason. I'm a firm believer in religion, but I don't think I'm a firmer believer that religion doesn't belong in the public high school. Superintendent said it was a site decision. Well, can that person at the site decide to cancel for a Giants game? Does a person decide Jewish holidays are more important than Catholics, or Buddhist holidays are more important than Muslim? I mean, where do you draw the line, all right? You open up a can of worms here, all right? It's a fact, the primary reason given was Yom Kippur was happening, all right? Now, there it is, it's out, that was the reason. Now, there might have been other reasons piled on later, but what I'd like to know is, every instance I've found on the net, it was a school board decision, all right? Rabbis appeared before the school board months in advance and said, you have the schedule for Yom Kippur. Would you consider going? No one showed up at the last meeting to do this. Now, can someone privately call a person at the high school and say, hey, I'm your friend, I happen to be Buddhist birthday's April 8th. I don't want the math contest on, all right? On my sacred holiday, St. Patrick's Day, next March 17th, they have the exit exam for the sophomores. I want that canceled. I want to know who to call to cancel that. All right? Ramadan, luckily, it doesn't start when next year's graduation starts, but your meeting is being held on the sacred day, Muslim day of Ramadan, the 18th of July. I think you should cancel that. If you cancel it for Yom Kippur, you should cancel it for Ramadan. All right? I mean, where do you start? Where do you end? And I don't know why. My son goes to a Catholic university. That's my decision, all right? He goes there. If people want to drag religion in, go to a religious school. It does not belong in a public school. And having the primary reason, unless Common Core has defined primary as a different thing, was a religious reason, all right? That should have no bearing on public education. And if you're going to start doing that, I will be glad to send a list of events I want to schedule, reschedule, postpone, whatever, due to religious holidays, all religious holidays, Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, everyone. And that, you open the door, I'm gonna fill it in. And what I'd like to know is, had it anywhere else, was a school board decision, had it been a decision, what would your vote would have been to postpone or to have? I think you owe it to the electorate to say, no, I guess I would have postponed the homecoming parade and dance and et cetera, or I wouldn't have postponed it. I think that'd be fair to let people know how you stand on religion in our public schools. That's my 3 minutes.
Any other public comment?
Well, I'll take up the you know.
So I tried to get this as an agenda item, all right? But the committee that decides on what the agenda items wouldn't allow it, but there's an individual somewhere, not a committee, deciding when to postpone dates. But please, Mike, I appreciate it.
You know, I take your point, not to the extreme that you're making it, in the sense that I think that there's an absolute list of every religious holiday known to be practiced in Mendocino County, and that we should not have events on those dates. I think that's too extreme, but I think that we should have, and I thought we did have, a policy in place about what things we do, what events we schedule around. And I think that if someone had asked me, is Yom Kippur one of those dates that we don't schedule events on, I would have said yes. I'm not a Jew, but I all the time that I've been a student, that's a date that events were not scheduled on, primarily because, you know, there were participants in the activities who would not be able to participate. And it was unfair to them to have the event canceled. I think that's a fine tradition. If there were similarly large groups, or in our case, it only takes 1 or 2 people involved, who were inconvenienced in terms of their religious practice about, you know, for another thing, I would add that to the list. But I think you're right. We should have a clear list and a clear understanding of how those decisions are made. So I support what you said.
Any other public comments?
I have a question.
Accounts?
I would like to know, I have a question before I have a public comment. I would like to know about the male person, the classified male person position.
You mean the extra hours?
Yeah, just what is it?
well, we have to have someone who delivers mail to all of our sites
Uh-huh.
in our office. So I want to send something to the high school or to the K school, and also to go get the mail. It's built into another job. It's not a separate person.
Okay.
It's
That was
someone
my
who's already
concern.
employed, and then it's part of their
It's a
job.
duty of something.
It's a- But it's listed in the, it's listed as a separate job.
Okay. Well, when I saw that, I just was like,
Yeah, no,
there's less mail than there's ever been in the world now because of the
yeah.
email and
Yeah.
computers and
It's another duty.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
And your public comment?
No, that was it. I was only, if it was like an actual position, I was just going to say, like, how is it possible? So,
Yeah,
that's it.
I just have to follow up what Mike said. Michael said, is there a process and procedures in place to schedule events around? I mean, that, he brought that up.
No, I think that I would support your request to have that as an agenda item so we can answer that question in a full and complete manner. So I would ask that at our next meeting, we have that process that we currently follow as an agenda item so it can be explained.
Which brings us to section 9, which is future agenda items.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a totally appropriate thing to be discussed.
But
Okay.
the next meeting is my birthday. I'd like to have that put.
We'll have
We don't have a policy. I searched and searched. We don't have an actual policy that outlines it, so we could create a policy.
Well, I think we should look around and see what other districts have, and if you want to propose a policy. But I think that, you know, I don't really know anything about this, but I will say that my guess is that if the schedule had been made with people knowing that date was Yom Kippur, would not have been initially scheduled that way, it was an oversight that was corrected, you know, so.
I would have been fine if they didn't bring up the reason why.
And we're gonna make it,
So we're all trying to,
Yeah,
we like to be transparent, Paul.
so, we can make it an agenda item. Part of making an agenda item, it gives people who are interested in that item, to be present rather than part of a timed, item. So let's put on the agenda, people in the community who are interested then have the opportunity.
Fantastic.
Okay, so, agenda item, future agenda items, are you gonna do the discussion around religion and school holidays or school
Yeah,
events or
policy.
Think about that.
policies? Do you
Yeah.
wanna put together some?
Events policy.
Okay, and then, Kathy, you had a request that we talk about, board protocol, for open session. That we, follow the protocol for our timed items into what we do in, our open session discussions.
No, not necessarily, just that we're just very sure about Brown Act procedures and allowing for public comment and then moving it back to board action only, rather than, I guess that's probably what I want to say.
Okay, so we're gonna have, can we have an item regarding board protocol
And then,
in the way of complying
For open session items.
Yeah.
for open
Yeah.
session? Because we already, did you wanna, change the time item as well? The 6 o'clock has that 3-minute with 20-minute limit.
not necessarily,
Okay.
but I do, when I was just looking at these science scores, it made me think that, it might be nice to hear from the principals about response to intervention strategies, because I'm looking at the 5th graders and it looks like more than 25% of the students are basic or far below. And so for 25% of a class, I'm just curious about strategies. And I don't know whether it rises to an agenda item or not. Maybe it could just be a report you guys can include sometime.
It doesn't have to be next month. It could be-
No, it doesn't at
Yeah,
all.
Could be,
It's just-
but if you put that, have that in the future, Liz, I thought I'd be
Well-
hearing about that too.
We've had, at board retreats, we've addressed ELA, we've addressed math. We can have the board retreat discussion on our science program.
But then the public doesn't get to hear that,
But
because
the
I know they're invited, but
Yeah.
Well,
the
I
truth is
think
nobody
having
comes.
a regular board meeting and have that as an agenda item.
So let's give the staff some time to put that together.
Sure, yeah.
So we have a couple of interesting, good items ahead. Stay tuned, come back.
So,
Kathy said, what, you said 25%?
Well, I was just looking at fifth grade,
Yeah.
if you count 17 plus 13 plus 3,
Oh, so basic.
basic below and far below, you know, not proficient essentially, that's a quarter of the fifth graders.
I mean, I think, you know,
Create
theoretically, we're still under the,
I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong.
no,
I
I
agree.
agree, but I mean, theoretically, I mean, we're still under the mandate to have 100% proficient and above
By 2014?
by 2014.
Yeah.
So that's, let's make it an agenda
Yeah.
item, and we'll have a real discussion on it. Okay, any other future agenda items? No, okay, well, are we done? Thank you, everybody.
Going back into closed session.
We're
because-
gonna go back to our closed session.
So we'll peek out if somebody's actually shows up that wanted to talk.
Yeah.
No, I don't know,
And
that
if
3
you'd like
minutes.
to stay here until 6 and have another thought.
Giants around.
Really good, thanks for coming down to Albion, everyone, I appreciate you being here. Hey.
Jason.